Hi, this is Dr. Reese. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to use the PowerPoint template for the stored value or debit card presentation. On your screen, you'll see the title page of the PowerPoint presentation. On the title page of the PowerPoint presentation, you need to add the first and last names of all of the members of your group. Again, on the title page of the card, you need to add the first and last name. Here you see I have in red font, first and last name. Put the first and last name of all the members of the group and change the font color to black. Nothing to do on the second slide. On the third slide, there's a presentation outline. In your audio narration, you should provide a brief overview of the Rush Card Company. 2, you should provide a description of a typical transaction. I suggest that you add $400 a month for 2 months. So 400, say in August, and 400 in September. This text in the red font are my instructions to you. In the final version, you should remove the text in red font. You need to identify what identification is required by the Rush Card people to set up an account. 3, you need to provide a summary of the major terms of the contract for setting up a Rush Card debit account. Again, you should walk the listeners through all of that in your audio narration, which you're going to add to the PowerPoint presentation. And then finally, you should identify the timing of all fees and associated with using the card over the 2-month period. Again, I suggest you use an example where you add $400 a month in August and $400 a month in September, and then identify all of the fees that are associated with adding the money to the account and then using the $400 in the account to buy things. So 5, you need to identify the summary of benefits associated with using this debit card account. And number 6, you need to identify any state and or federal regulators responsible for monitoring or managing this financial services. Identify what regulators in the state of Georgia might be responsible for this financial service, what federal regulators might be responsible for the service. Again, in this red font, I'm talking to you. You're going to remove that in the final version of the presentation. And the company overview, you need to identify when the company was started. You need to identify who the current owner of Rush Card Live is. That may be a hint to you that the ownership has changed. Again, in the final version of the slide, you're going to remove all these red fonts. This is me talking to you. On slide number 6, you're going to indicate that the Rush Card is not a credit card. You're going to describe the difference between a debit card and a credit card. 2, you're going to identify how and if any way the use of a debit card will impact your credit rating or the credit rating of the user. And 3, you're going to talk about whether or not you can make direct deposits to your Rush Card account. 4, you're going to identify any other ways that you might add funds other than direct deposit. In other words, can you add them at a retail location? Can you transfer money from a bank account to your debit card, etc.? Now that brings us to the description of a typical transaction. This is slide number 7. Can provide a quick overview. Now, again, I suggest that you add $400 to the account, $400 in August, $400 in September. Again, this red font is me talking to you. Remove that in the final version. Please remove any text I have in red font in the final version that you submit. 3, you're going to identify what identification is required to set up and use this account. Here on slide 8, you're going to identify the major terms of the transaction, the length. In this case, again, I suggest that you walk through a transaction where you use the card for 2 months in August and September. 2, you're going to identify any fees or charges associated with using the card. That includes loading funds onto the card, securing the card itself, and any charges associated with actually purchasing things with the card. 3, you're going to identify if it's possible to have overdrafts on a rush card. 4, you're going to identify if there's any dispute between you and the rush card people, or between the holder of the rush card and the rush card people, where you would have to go to court to settle any dispute. We refer to this as the jurisdiction. This is something that the jurisdiction is where any legal conflicts would have to be adjudicated. If you examine the company's website, you should be able to find out where any legal action would have to proceed and what location it would have to proceed. You're going to identify whether any fees for defaults and penalties in using the card. Now, on slide number 9, you're going to identify the starting date of the transaction and the end date of the transaction, total fees and charges to use the debit card. Again, I suggest that you just start with August 1st. Remember, this is a hypothetical example. You're not actually using the card. So I would start with a hypothetical start date of August 1st and a hypothetical end date of September 30. Keep it simple. Here is a chart. Do not change the structure of this chart. You can put a date, a description, and the amount of a transaction here. There's another slide. Slide number 10 allows you to put additional charges in slide number 11. So there should be enough spaces. If you need to copy slide number 11 because you have more charges, you can do that. That brings us to slide 12, and this may be 13 if you have to add a slide for fees and charges. Here on this slide, we identify the benefits of the transaction. 1, we identify what documentation is required to obtain and use a rush card. And 2, we describe the process. Was it convenient or not? In the follow-on slide, we identify any other benefits associated with it. So for example, some people like using debit cards because it means they don't have to carry cash around with them, and they don't want to be in a position where they have to have a lot of cash on their person. In this slide, we're going to identify what regulators are responsible for overseeing the provision of this service. So you're going to identify any federal regulators, list them. Again, in this red font, I'm identifying what I want you to do. In the final version of this PowerPoint presentation, please remove the list them that's in red font. Put a list of federal regulators and put them in black font. If there are any state regulators, list them. If there are any local regulators, list them. But again, get rid of my parenthetical comment where it says list them. I'm talking to you in the final version of the PowerPoint presentation. Delete the red font and list any regulators that are either federal, state, or local. Here's a page where you can identify and discuss more fully any federal regulators that are responsible for this activity. Here's a page where you can identify any state regulators, list them, and explain more fully how they oversee this activity. And then here is a page for local regulators, if there are any. List them and explain how they supervise this activity. Again, I have instructions for you in the red font. Please delete that, add the information required, and put that in black font. Briefly list and describe any personal insights you've had as a result of completing this project. All right, that's it. That's all you got to do. It may be helpful as you think about and describe the regulation of these various alternative financial services to think about the objectives and mechanics of various bank regulations. There is a separate video in which I discuss the objectives and mechanics of bank regulation. It would be helpful to watch that video as you prepare your bank regulation presentations.